We're going to do another installment of the Underworld franchise. Yes. You didn't let me finish. We have Kate Beckinsale back as Celine.
Already a yes.
Will you let me finish? I'm just going to keep going. It will feature some Nordic vampires. They'll have crazy white hair and will be kind of a religious cult, but we're going to try to shoehorn in a connection to that elder vampire that died in the first one. It won't really fit, but we'll cram it in. There has to be a reference to Scott Speedman since he won't be back. I see you nodding. Are you even listening to me? No. When can you get started?
Because that's how you get ants.
I'm in for any Underworld movie. Oh, I acknowledge that they've been getting progressively worse over time, but it's so loud and blunt and over the top, every installment of the film is like catharsis. So, of course I was excited for Underworld... What is this? 5? Yeah, 5. Underworld Blood Wars. Or as my friend Joe would say...
Who left the fridge open?
I mean, look at this. There's snow, there's big coats, Celine's got a whole new look, and it's awesome! For those of you who don't know, the original Underworld was basically supernatural Romeo and Juliet, where the vampires were the Romulans and the werewolves were the catapults. No, wait. Well, kind of? The original Underworld drew on the fur versus fang trope, where the werewolves and the vampires have a deep-seated animosity that has resulted in a centuries-long war that is sort of winding down in the first movie, only to be reignited, of course, because there is a franchise to be had and money to be made. The movie expands upon the lore. Vampirism and lycanthropy are diseases that make the victim immortal. There's an original family, the Corvinus tribe, that are the founders of the different races.
The sons of the Corvinus clan. One bitten by bat, one by wolf, one to walk the lonely road of mortality as a human. It's a ridiculous legend.
Kate Beckinsale as Celine falls in love with a human who then becomes a werewolf, who she then bites and turns into a hybrid. They have a kid together at one point while she's in cryogenic stasis, which I would have to go back and watch to double check on whether that was a real child or some kind of clone or scientific abomination.
The abomination.
Anyway, that sort of gets us to Underworld Blood Wars. At this point, Celine is an outcast from the vampire society and is simultaneously being hunted by the werewolves. Her daughter from the last movie is in hiding. Not even Celine knows where she is. Both the vampires and the werewolves want her daughter and go after Celine in the effort to find her. If you're familiar with the Underworld franchise, you'll quickly realize that they have to fix a few mistakes in continuity every film. Some plot threads get dropped, other internal inconsistencies aren't even glossed over, they're just ignored. If you get lost, well, don't worry. A voiceover will explain the main points to you in the beginning, and while that's kind of a cheap way out, it's been consistent throughout the series.
The war had all but ground to a halt in the blink of an eye.
We open on Celine getting chased by a bunch of werewolves. They catch up to her in a blocked-off tunnel. She yells at them to leave her alone, which sounds shockingly desperate for someone with the ass-kicking skills we've seen her demonstrate in 4 of these franchise films. I might be taking a leap here, but go with me on this. I think Celine is borderline suicidal in this film. She's lost everything at this point. There's no one who will help her. She has no home, and she's being hunted by 2 breeds of supernatural immortal creature. So she has nowhere to hide. There's only so much running you can do before you just give up. The werewolves harpoon her in the arm, and she slaughters all of them in such a lackluster half-speed manner, it kind of feels like she's punishing them for their own incompetence at not being able to kill her. She doesn't have a fight with the Lycans anymore. If they just let her go, she would leave them be. Instead, they're dead. I love the way Celine just casually destroys them. It's basically her saying, "Look what you made me do," while they whimper and cower in fear. Also, I mean, look at how good she is at it. David, played by Theo James, shows up to help her, as if she needed any help, and gets shot by a burrowing bullet for his trouble. He's not able to heal the wound himself because it keeps drilling into him. I think this shows that the female protagonist offers a unique opportunity that allows an emotional vulnerability that doesn't typically translate to male protagonists. On the flip side, we get a scene with the vampires, now headed by a council. A few movies ago, Celine helped kill all the vampire elders, so there's a power vacuum. Lara Pulver plays Samira, a vampire who's trying to carve her way into more political power. She wants to get Celine for her daughter because hybrid blood is special. She manipulates the council into giving Celine clemency, saying they need her for combat training against the new werewolf threat, Marius. Lara Pulver does great at this. I mean, the only reason she has those fangs is to chew the scenery to bits, and she does not disappoint. You might recognize her from True Blood or Sherlock. She's drippingly villainous and is a nice conniving foil to Celine's shoot now, ask questions later hero. Celine takes the offer of clemency. Samira and the head of the Death Dealers, Varga, set it up to make it look like Celine killed all of their troops when they actually poisoned her and are holding her hostage. They put her in a blood harvesting torture machine that's just... ugh. In the best, most disgusting vampire movie way. I mean, it's subtitled Blood Wars. How could it not have a medieval blood harvesting device? All throughout this movie, there are these stark contrasts between the way the werewolves and the vampires live. The werewolves are dirty and downtrodden, wearing crusty hand-me-downs and living in a muddy train yard. The vampires are elites with money and technology, living in castles. Most of them aren't fighters. They just languish in the blood-filled luxury of their overindulgent existence. Hashtag Occupy Wall Street. David and his father, Thomas, played by worse than most Lannisters Charles Dance, rescue Celine. Thomas is killed in the process. He told David to go hide with the Nordic coven of vampires. While David is carrying the mostly drained Celine to safety, Samira sees that both David and Celine are immune to sunlight, which happened in a previous movie, but whatever, it's fine. David allows Celine to feed off of him, which brings the blood memory aspect of the series back into play and catches Celine up on the part of the plot she was unconscious for. They escape to the north. All the northern vampires are blonde and speak in riddles. They live high up on an ice cliff. There's kind of a 30 Days of Night vibe happening because they're so far north the sun never rises. It turns out David is the son of Amelia, one of the elders, which makes him an elder. Amelia left some of her blood, and therefore memories, with the Nordic vampires to prove his purity. David allows Celine to feed off of him, which brings the blood memory aspect of the series back into play, and catches Celine up on the part of the plot she was unconscious for. They escape to the north. All the northern vampires are blonde and speak in riddles. They live high up on an ice cliff. There's kind of a 30 Days of Night vibe happening because they're so far north the sun never rises. It turns out David is the son of Amelia, one of the elders, which makes him an elder. Amelia left some of her blood, and therefore memories, with the Nordic vampires to prove his purity. They don't really get too deep into how vampires are having children, but it's clear that there are young child-aged vampires in the Nordic coven. Marius has a vampire girlfriend who gives away Celine's location. They storm the Nordic castle. Celine faces off against Marius, and they do this cool drop off the cliff, which is a callback to Celine dropping off the bell tower in the first movie. Marius, of course, just tumbles down like the clumsy wolf person he is. Then he kicks Celine's ass. He keeps asking her where the daughter is. The vampire girlfriend tries some of Celine's blood and realizes she was telling the truth. Meanwhile, Celine slips under the ice of a frozen lake and her eyes fade from vampire blue to brown. By all appearances dead, but I mean, this is a movie about a bunch of immortals, I mean, I don't want to diminish how cool this is, though. I argue that this character has been suicidal since the beginning of the film, and I really think that the mentality of Celine at this moment was just to get it over with and die already. David goes back to the Coven and proves he's the heir to the throne, or whatever, the leader, I guess. He arrests Samira. The werewolves choose that moment to attack. They start by blowing holes in the walls to let in the sunlight. Now, David is immune to sunlight, but none of the other vampires are. There's this part of the fight where David and Marius are just pouring bullets into each other to no avail until they're face to face and just roar at each other, which is... Regardless, the vampires are losing, but lo and behold, here comes the Nordic Coven for backup. Celine is with them, having gone through a resurrection religious event that has not only given her a new hairstyle, but leveled up her vampire skills. She's now super fast, too. She lures Marius away. Samira has used the werewolf invasion as a distraction. There's a great fight scene between her and David where David finally throws a knife at a button that triggers the shutters, revealing the sun. Samira has drunk so much of Celine's blood that she's immune to sunlight too, but she's so taken with seeing the sun again that she doesn't realize that David has come up behind her. And he shoves a sword through the back of her head and out her mouth. So, come back from that. I know what you're thinking. How did this political enemy somehow nearly best one of our death dealer heroes in combat? I'm going to take another liberty here and say that she drank so much of Celine's blood that through the vampiric memory transfer process, she was able to gain a decent number of Celine's fighting skills. Celine and Marius have a confrontation in a training room, so it's just racks of weapons and bullets. Celine gets a drop of Marius's blood and therefore memories, which reveals Marius found Michael, killed him, and harvested Michael's blood, which he has been consuming in order to become the stronger werewolf that can last in the fight against Celine. Celine locks herself in a training cage that Marius destroys his way into. Celine finally stops dicking around and just rips out his spinal column. It just rips it out. With their leader dead, the werewolves retreat. Celine, David, and a Nordic vampire become the new elders. The last scene is Celine waiting on the frozen lake outside of the Nordic Coven castle while her daughter approaches from the distance. Just rips it out. Underworld Blood Wars is just a loose series of events to justify leveling Celine up one more time. The main character's arc is to survive in an ironic film where it seems all the protagonist wants to do is die. We aren't really given this scene, but I bet when Celine woke up from the Nordic resurrection ritual, she was like, seriously?
Why won't you die?
Every Underworld movie tries to find a way to up the ante, giving Celine more abilities and making her fight stronger werewolves. The thing is, that's kind of the point. In the first movie, it's established that both species have hit a stagnation in their evolution. The werewolves have evolved to be more than mindless monsters able to transform outside the phases of the moon. They've also learned how to make UV bullets to kill their enemies more efficiently. But that's as far as they've gone. I've already talked about how the vampires have become lethargic in their affluence. Celine has become the one key to their evolution. I mean, one of the movies is even called Underworld Evolution. The Underworld movies always seem to deliver on their promise of an over-the-top gore-fest monster fight of two immortal creatures slugging it out. I mean, come on, she rips out a dude's spine. I'm not saying you should lower your expectations, but I do think you should know what you're getting into in this particular franchise. This installment of Underworld delivers on its nonsensical, blood-soaked fun. That's all for this episode of Anything Nice to Say. Stay inside during the full moon and never be ashamed to like what you like. Like, share, and subscribe. Check out my book, Live Like Legends, and head over to Patreon to become a patron to get your name in the credits, get access to exclusive content, and early access to all our videos. If you have a suggestion for a movie you would like us to say anything nice about, be sure to leave it in the comments below. Seriously. 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 Guys. Seriously.